Unidentified flying objects, or unidentified aerial phenomena, are an enduring mystery and have been since at least the 1940s. Strange shapes winging through the sky, hovering over homes, flaunting the laws of physics, odd flashing lights and unfamiliar sounds, or, in some cases, no sounds at all. Are they just unusual weather events? Normal aircraft mistaken for something weird? New technology from private industry? Or technology that we humans aren't even capable of? Those are the questions that MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, seeks to answer. This international organization has chapters all over the world and in every state in the U.S. Their mission is to investigate reports of UFO sightings to determine if they have a terrestrial explanation or one that might be more out of this world. MUFON has been around since 1969, and the man we're about to hear from, Rob Swiatek, has been involved since 1976. He now sits on the board of directors, and he tells me what drew him to this topic and to MUFON.
Well, I had a prior interest. Back in the late 60s, 1968 or 1969, they had a UFO investigatory project that was going on, sponsored by the Air Force at the University of Colorado. That was garnering a lot of news at the time. And UFO sightings were reported in the newspapers in those days, on the front pages frequently. And it just got me intensely interested to just what the heck was going on.
Yeah, what was it that fascinated you? What drew you in? What got you sort of, not obsessed might be the wrong word, but just really intrigued by this topic?
Well, that's a great question. It was the actual sightings themselves. Here people are reporting these seeming objects in the sky, sometimes landing on the ground for brief periods of time. And I already had an interest in astronomy. A lot of sightings were explained, but some weren't. And the way these objects behaved, the way they looked, it just caught my imagination. And I thought, gee, there seems to be something behind this, and it's not a weather phenomenon, or it's not satellites or meteorological balloons. And I was just, completely taken with the subject.
Yeah. Did you ever have a sighting of your own or an experience of your own?
No, I've never seen anything that I can definitively say was really, really, really odd. A couple things maybe I couldn't explain, but nothing I ever reported. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so it's really just the collection of all these other cases that has kept you involved and intrigued.
You're 100% correct.
Yeah. So, do you have to be a scientist to join MUFON? Do you have to have a background in science, or is it open to anybody?
It's open to anybody, Laura. A lot of our field investigators, believe it or not, are former policemen or investigators, police investigators, detectives, or other people like that who find when they retire from the police job, wow, investigating UFO cases sort of uses a lot of the same skills. And it's interesting that we have this whole cadre of people who are investigators in that sense. But no, by no means does everybody have an engineering or a science degree.
Okay. Are there a fair number? I mean, you said you had a background in science. You said astronomy and...
Yeah, my background is physics and earth science. I double majored in those areas. And just to add one more little piece here, I did work in science throughout my career at the United States Patent and Trademark Office. But yeah, there are a number of other people in MUFON who either have PhDs or engineering backgrounds. I wouldn't say it's 90% of them, but I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a fair number.
So what is MUFON's role? What is MUFON trying to accomplish?
Well, our mission statement would be like we're trying to understand what's behind the UFO phenomenon for the benefit of the world. I mean, if you're going to have a mission statement, you might as well make it grandiose. And so, yeah, that's what it is. And we do that by investigating sightings and by publicizing and also trying to educate the public.
Okay. And then with education, is it trying to help people, determine the difference between a weather phenomenon and something that's truly unidentified? Or when you say education, what do you mean exactly?
Yeah, what do I mean? Well, that certainly is one of them, to be able to distinguish mundane objects from what constitutes a true UFO. But it would also be to just educate people on the phenomenon just in general. What are sightings? What constitutes a good sighting? What constitutes a bad sighting? What is the phenomenon? Where can you go to get more information outside of MUFON? What interesting books or publications might you read? What conferences might you want to go to? This type thing. so that people are getting good information and not misinformation.
Yeah, how do you decipher whether a UFO sighting is an actual UFO? Is there a procedure to it, like a formula? Like how do you determine if someone comes to you and says I saw something? How do you determine if that sighting is sort of rises to the level?
I wish we had a formula we could fill the variables in, right, and solve it.
Yeah.
But no, we solve it by, it's a little harder. We solve it by actual field investigation, where people are going out into the location where a UFO was seen, or conducting an extensive interview with the witness or witnesses of the sightings, and then just trying to make a determination as to what did they see, and you would then correlate it with what things might have been in the sky at that time. If it was in the daytime, what phenomena could produce something that looks like the object the person said they saw, maybe an airplane. There's a multitude of different things. But it's just a matter of then ruling out or ruling in things that could explain the sighting.
Are there some claims that just can't be verified or seem too outlandish?
Yeah, some things seem to pass beyond credulity, if you will. And that's where a person's experience in the field has to come in if you're an investigator and a judge of people, to say, yeah, I think this person is definitely telling the truth, or no, this goes beyond the pale and it sounds like it was made up, or it didn't really occur the way they're saying. But I will say, to paraphrase, I think a British scientist, J.B.S. Haldane, the UFO subject is not only stranger than you imagine, it can be stranger than you can imagine. And some of the cases seem to be genuine, but they seem so odd, you just can't almost encompass it with your mind. Let's put it that way, how the thing could have worked or exist.
So what do you do with cases like that? You just sort of file the information away and see if something else similar happens? Or, yeah, it seems to me like some of this information, it's like, I don't know what to do with this because it's so weird.
Well, that's been sort of the dilemma of the UFO field since about 1947. We have this enormous pile of cases that we've now looked at. Even if it's only 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 that's unexplained, they add up over the years. And we have this great big pile of cases. And that's a good question. What do we do with those things? And we've never been able to convince the scientific field in general, as a group, that there really is something flying through the sky that can't be explained by mundane things. And number two, we've never really had the kind of funds that you need to go up to the next step to bring the big guns of science to bear, if you will, on this subject. So yeah, unfortunately, the cases sometimes just languish there and waiting for somebody to try to go by and figure out what's going on.
I'm curious, what evidence, there are the sightings, obviously, in these field reports that you have gathered over the decades now. What other evidence is there?
Well, okay, the field evidence or whatever constitutes a rather broad range of phenomena. So yeah, you have marks left in the ground. Sometimes people physically are injured by these things. So there's injuries on your bodies. You go outside and you see an object and you come back and your eyes are swollen shut or something like that because the light was so bright, and you actually have your eyes have been at least temporarily damaged or hurt. Satellites and normal phenomena, short of you looking at the sun, doesn't cause stuff like that. So that kind of physical evidence we have. Sometimes videos and photographs are taken, so we have that. We have these objects being picked up on radar. So in theory, you have radar trackings that can be recorded and later reviewed. Other scientific instruments have picked these things up. Magnetometers have moved. There's also a certain amount of physical objects in the form of odd metallic substances or pieces of UFOs, let's put it that way, that are in private hands. And sometimes it seems to be that they really do exhibit an odd structure. But again, you can have an object looked at by a lab, a piece of metal, for example, and they can say it has these properties and this seems strange. But really, scientists want to have other people look at that information to replicate it and have it looked at by a number of people and get a consensus on it. That's where we haven't succeeded in getting these objects looked at by a whole bunch of people where they all agree, yeah, we can't make that kind of an object.
If people who hear this interview, for instance, want to see some of this stuff, can you go onto the website and look at some of these cases that have been reported just to sort of see what the evidence is?
Yeah. MUFON does put up a number of. They pick a number of recent cases and they put them up on their website. I think there's a category up there, a drop-down menu that says news or something, UFO news, and you can look under that and get a number of recent cases that are pretty good.
You've got different people doing the field investigations. Is there a certain protocol that they have to follow so you can make sure that at least all of these investigations are sort of meeting a baseline level, so that if you do try to compile all this data into a bigger picture, you know for sure that they've kind of met these basic requirements?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great observation. We have a field investigator's guide, a manual, if you will, that tells exactly how you should handle the various types of cases, from very simple cases and how do you handle the interview, what steps do you go through, what do you do if something was reported as hovering over a piece of ground and it disturbs the vegetation or there's burn marks or something. All the steps are set forth to how the investigator should approach an investigation of such a case, so that all, as you put it, all the sightings are uniform. So yeah, that's a big part of the field investigators. We try to follow a scientific protocol and investigative protocol to the extent we can.
Okay, and then all of these cases get put into a central database?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that would be the case management system. And I will say that all the field investigators are volunteers, by the way. Unfortunately, we can't pay anybody, so all this is a labor of love. But yes, when a person wants to file a case with MUFON, you would go to the MUFON website, MUFON.org or .com, and there's a button you can click on to report a UFO sighting, and that gets your case into the system, into the CMS system. Once it's in the system, it's then assigned to the proper state, and a state director is given to the case, and that person will eventually the witness will eventually be contacted by an investigator.
So if someone comes to me with a sighting, I should tell them to go to the MUFON website?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Good to know. So, there's lots of sightings. And as you said, a number of them can be chalked up to, weather phenomena or aircraft or drones or kind of any number of terrestrial explanations. Do you have a sense of the ratio of like how many are actually something pretty prosaic and mundane versus something that really is truly an unidentified flying object?
Yeah, there's a bit of a range there, but over the years, investigators have sort of come up with the fact that the unknowns are generally from 10 to 20% of all sightings. Sometimes it's a bit less. When the Air Force went through the cases, I think they found a little bit less. It wasn't zero, of course. Might have been 3 to 5%, but it hovers around 10. Sometimes it goes up to 20, but if it starts getting into 50% of all cases are unidentified, then that would be certainly extraordinarily unusual.
Yeah. Is there a possibility that some of those cases could just be technology that we're unfamiliar with that is of a terrestrial origin, not alien, or is most of that ruled out? I'm just curious. Like, I'm sure private industry is developing stuff that is completely foreign to what we are normally accustomed to seeing.
Yeah, and it keeps getting a little trickier for investigators to rule all this stuff out. Back in 1952 or 1951, you didn't have satellites orbiting the Earth. Drones were virtually unknown. And so a number of sighting explanations didn't exist back then. Now they do. So yeah, you have to be cognizant of the latest technology. It has to do something more than just travel across the sky in a straight line, because that's what airplanes do. And you can almost say, well, if I just see a light at the night and it went from my right and it went to my left, but I could never really identify what that light is, probably it was a terrestrial explanation. It's probably an airplane or a satellite. Did it do anything UFO-like? Did it suddenly make a series of right-angle turns? Did it move so fast across the sky and come to a sudden stop that you were completely astounded? Then the typical UFO researcher's ears perk up when they hear something like that.
The kinds of sightings that can't easily be dismissed.
Well, absolutely right. But even so, with all these odd cases that investigators have accumulated over these years, I personally don't think at the moment, I don't have anything I can say unequivocally proves that this object came from another solar system or is the product of a non-human technology. My opinion is that that's the basis of the phenomenon, but that's as far as I will ever go. It's my opinion. I can't prove it as scientific fact. And if I could, others would have been able to do that before me, who are far more connected in scientific circles than I am. It's hard to believe that since 1947, we haven't been able to make that case yet. But I think the case is there and it can be made.
Why do you think that case has been so hard to make?
So when some person who is a non-scientist says, oh, this disc-shaped object flew over my house last night and it stopped for 10 minutes and I looked at it and then it flew off and nobody else saw it. Nobody else got a picture of it. It just sounds too hard to believe. And, well, did it do anything else? No. Did the government come out and question you? No. Well, then it had to be something else. A typical person is going to say, a scientist will say it had to be something else. Disc-shaped things aren't flying around. We would know about it. So that sort of ridicule factor, the silly features of UFOs, have done a lot to mitigate against scientific interest in the subject. I mean, it just sounds so hard to believe that all these people could be seeing these things, and yet we really can't prove they're up there or that they are not human manufactured objects.
So, and this is hypothetical. Let's say it is aliens visiting Earth, and what do you think? Like, why do you think they would be coming here? Especially since clearly, based on the technology, we would be far inferior. What do you think why they would be visiting Earth?
I don't really know, Laura, and boy, people have speculated on that kind of stuff, and the speculation is all over the board, and I honestly don't know how aliens would act. A lot of people seem to think, well, a truly alien society would reach out to the leaders on this planet or the leaders of the various countries and seek to make contact with them. Well, they haven't done that. It seemingly is not going to happen. I don't know why. Woody Allen once wrote that maybe UFOs come here and they're here because they just like to hover. I mean, that's as good an explanation as any, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, maybe the atmosphere is just right for them to be able to do things that they can't do elsewhere.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, aliens, by definition, are not going to think necessarily like humans. They're going to have an alien rationale, and it's not going to be the human rationale. What a human would do would be different from what an alien would do, I would think. Sometimes they might overlap, but more often than not, they would have motives that we fail to see or even to comprehend or understand.
Is there any one case that stands out for you that you kind of keep going back to as gosh, I wish we could figure out more about this?
Well, yeah, there's I don't know if there's any one case, but objects that have a jewel-like shape with faceted sides that look like a cut diamond or a cut gemstone of some type, and a person will report seeing a jewel-shaped object hovering in the sky above them, a large object with faceted sides. The sun's reflecting off the sides sometimes. It's obviously not a balloon, no appendages on this thing, and then it just suddenly zips off across the sky and vanishes. Kind of a mundane case, but these jewel-like objects periodically show up over the years. Mm-hmm. And what especially impresses me about these is they make no sense whatsoever. An alien civilization has discovered is using a spacecraft, and it looks like a cut jewel. There's no apparatus on this thing that seems to give it propulsion or lift. There are no windows. There are no doors. It's just like a large quartz crystal or a large diamond or something like that is hovering in the sky, and then it darts off. I just can't explain it, and I'm gobsmacked. I sit there scratching my head.
Yeah. Well, and also I'm just curious, as a physicist, when you look at a shape like that or you look at a flying saucer, do you think about aerodynamics and propulsion and like why those shapes would be chosen?
Oh, absolutely I do. Absolutely I do. And a diamond-shaped object, to my knowledge, doesn't have any surfaces that really generate lift, much less allow it to just hover in place. So yeah, when I was at the patent office, I worked for many years to the end of my career there in aeronautics and astronautics. So yeah, we dealt with objects all the time that generated lift, that had ailerons, that had leading edges, and a saucer, I suppose, can generate a certain kind of a lift along a curved surface, but for a saucer to just hover in the air, and there's no jet engine on it, and it's not a balloon where it's lighter than air. I'm flummoxed with cases like that. But yeah, there's a lot of times these objects are not aerodynamic in any way, shape, or means, but there they are, and they're reported more than one time over the years.
Huh. Just from like a pure physics standpoint, you must be like, God, I wonder how they figured that out.
oh man, you got that right.
Do you ever get disappointed that this hasn't taken off, so to speak, that this hasn't gotten the attention of the scientific community, that the kind of evidence that would convince people has been put forth?
Yeah, I do get discouraged. But back when I first got interested in this thing, I thought for sure it would be wrapped up in say the mid 70s or the late 70s, that humanity was just going to get to the root of this thing and solve it. And now 40 years have gone on since 1980, and we're basically still at the same point where we were back then. We have more cases, and the phenomenon has evolved a little bit. But I'm discouraged that I, just from a personal point of view, that I put all these years in the field, and I have a feeling I'm going to depart this world and not know much more about what's going on than I know right this moment speaking with you.
Yeah. And yet, and this is more of a philosophical question, you're still fascinated by this idea, and a lot of people are. Why do you think that is? What keeps drawing you in?
Well, it's just the tantalizing mystery and the promise of it all. I know something is happening here, and so I'm willing to follow it along, to the end of my days here. And I don't see myself as it getting mundane to me, so I'm willing to keep following it in the hopes that we'll learn some clues along the way, little insights. It might take a couple hundred years before we unravel it all, but maybe we'll make some progress along the way.
That was Rob Swiatek. He's on the board of directors of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. You can find out more about it on their website, MUFON.com, or find it on Twitter, @MUFON. You can find us, too, @WildThingPod. And if you want to be kept in the loop about what's happening with Wild Thing, you can sign up for our mailing list. Go to wildthingpodcast.com. This podcast is a production of Foxtopus Inc. Our executive producer is Scott Carney. Editing is by Alicia Lipinski. And the score and sound mixing come from Louis Weeks. I'm your host and creator, Laura Krantz.